So David, it's really great to get to spend some time with you. This is the first time we're meeting, so I'm going to learn a lot as well. So why don't you tell us in a very human way what Pipe Network is?
Yeah, so Pipe Network's a content delivery network. Today, for example, 3 to 4 billion people use content delivery systems. Any site at scale gets shoved behind a content delivery network like Cloudflare, CloudFront, Akamai. It's a $25 billion a year business. And essentially, most data centers are about 350 miles on average from the user. A traditional like Cloudflare is about 150 miles from the user. We try to pull the node within about 50 miles. And it's very fascinating how the latency drops dramatically between 150 and 50 miles.
Yep.
Typically, we see single digit millisecond latency with this. And essentially, it's really bizarre that the improvement's so significant that it's going to be very technologically difficult for the existing competition once
Yep.
we scale up.
And how was there a hypothesis initially that the proximity would have such an outstanding effect on the latency, or how did this happen? Where did this start?
It's typically we rely on this formula called a bandwidth delay product, and essentially that measures the latency between you and the receiving server. The higher the latency, the less packets you can fill that pipe with. So if you're on like a 10 gigabit and latency is like 300 milliseconds, you're only using like 10% of that bandwidth. So it's very important to get the latency as low as possible to open up all the bandwidth possible.
Okay. And I can imagine the latency challenge would be really interesting for a number of different types of clients, I suppose, with different use cases. I'm thinking like gaming or really heavy data sort of use cases. What about government agencies, maybe? Are you seeing any uptick there? Because I imagine latency would be a big thing for like a government agency or something in that realm.
Absolutely. We're very, very pro United States. The whole team's based there. A lot of our node operators are using Starlink because of the latency numbers it provides, which essentially are lower than fiber. It's very amazing because of the vacuum in space. We have essentially what we'd call like an intramesh of nodes.
Yep.
So today, just in our DevNet, getting ready to launch the testnet very soon, we've just crossed over 200,000 operators, and it's really nicely dispersed, and we can detect issues on the internet before it happens. So it's hyper redundant. So if there was like a agency that needed very redundant communication, this is very perfect for them.
And so, okay, so that's a lot of nodes. So how then are you competing with the likes of like, let's say, for example, Cloudflare? And I mean, I think I know what the value prop is, but if you've got, let's say, a government agency or even a private sector client that's used to using traditional infrastructure, what does the value prop look like when you compare it to a big established company like that?
Yeah, so the value prop is really great. Essentially, today, 80% of the revenue from CDNs comes from video delivery, and the lower the latency, the less buffering clients experience, the faster the load time. And it's really great when we look at Akamai and Fastly, like the two video CDNs. You'll rarely see Cloudflare in that mix. They provide free bandwidth, so
Yeah.
they're not optimized for latency, essentially.
Okay. And you're backed by some pretty serious organizations, Solana, for example. Um, what kind of advantage does that give you, those relationships in particular, over newer entrants?
Just the access to users and liquidity on the blockchain side,
Yep.
but in general, we do not think about blockchain ever. It's a last minute struggle to attach the system to a blockchain for us. It was built essentially with zero blockchain in mind.
And so what informed that decision? Why did the Nexus feel appropriate? And how are you thinking about the relationship now?
Yeah, so most of my team is actually very anti-blockchain.
Okay.
It's unfortunate because it's unique technology, but the deciding factor here was the ability to coordinate this many nodes.
Yeah.
There's no way we could send wire transfers or ACHs out, every week to hundreds of thousands of nodes. Like we're already at 200,000 with this DevNet stage. I imagine once we reach mainnet, it's going to be, 10x there or more.
Yeah.
And it's the coordination layer. It's really beautiful that, we've got people running nodes on little islands. It looks like in the middle of the ocean when you zoom in. It's fascinating. And also, when we need particular geographic regions, we can pay out bounties and say,
Mhm.
okay, we need nodes in Kansas City or those particular areas. And I don't, from my understanding, there's no on-chain bounty that's ever went unfulfilled. So
Wow, okay. And so maybe one of the, things that would inform your decision making with respect to where to spin up new nodes would be where you're seeing users. So again, if we think about a node's proximity to users as informing the speed, the delivery speed and latency, you would then be able to kind of look at, let's say, a heat map of the world and figure out where you've got customers that need to be serviced and what geographical locations you need to spin up infrastructure. And is that how that works?
exactly. So, for example, any video streaming site or app that's got more than 10 million users, they're already using multiple CDNs because none of them are providing sufficient coverage.
Yeah.
So basically, we just go to them and say, "Hey, give us your worst performing cities. We will insert nodes there, and we're guaranteed to improve the user experience for you."
So Netflix, for example, that would
Exactly.
be a suitable.
Netflix, Amazon Video, Hulu, HBO.
Okay, got it. And the majority of the clients that you're working with today, they are probably more on the it's B2B side rather than B2C side at this juncture, I would assume, right?
Yeah, so the consumer on the end, but they don't know this product even exists. Just like today, when you watch Netflix, you don't know what CDN servicing the video for you.
Yeah, you're just experiencing a better or worse experience, essentially.
Yeah, it's great because we can touch billions of users
Yeah.
with crypto, and they have no idea there's crypto or blockchain in there.
So you talked to me a little bit about the use of a blockchain to create an effective records management system, essentially. Um, what is the crypto aspect? And I'm assuming that's related to probably incentivization, running nodes. Can you maybe walk us through what that looks like?
Yeah, so it's purely for us incentivizing bandwidth or egress from the nodes.
Yeah.
Um, we that's the only time a reward would be issued. So
Okay.
it's a very strict reward based model.
Yeah.
So there's not an incentive to pay users not to sell. Those types of systems don't seem to be very sustainable to us. We do use the blockchain a little bit to post like zero knowledge cryptographic proofs of the bandwidth, and that's verified, which kicks out a payoff for the node.
Yeah.
But even that, we can host that ourselves, so we don't truly feel dependent upon the blockchain other than the payment and remittance side.
Yeah. Okay. And the nodes, they're run by you guys, or is that a decentralized arrangement?
Yeah, I think there's 5 of us, so
Okay.
we each run like 1 node each.
Yep.
The rest of the people, it's shocking how many people are running the nodes.
Yeah.
Um, so it's purely decentralized and open. As far as like permissionless, anyone can run a node.
Yep.
They can shut it down at any time. Um, there's always aspects of decentralization, and I think starting with the ability to allow anyone to run a node is what we have started with.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember, like, when I originally got into blockchain a very, very long time ago, there was this concept that you could, like, run Bitcoin Core on your laptop, and then, obviously, as the computational power and everything changed, the network grew, the ability for you to do that just didn't exist anymore. And then you had to migrate to data centers. And then that became like a peer to peer network, actually became more of a distributed network, and then that became a decentralized network. And so, um, yeah, I feel like there are probably a lot of opportunities for people that kind of like believe the ideology, and they want to participate in the bookkeeping, as it were, as of the system. And then certainly just probably some business value if you have servers and you can repurpose them for this. I mean, that might make a lot of sense as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So we love it if the node is in a neighborhood, but if it's in a data center, that's great too, because
Mm.
it can provide like caching to help replicate data down to the neighborhood side.
Yeah.
So it's multiple tiers of cache. It's very similar architecture of like Cloudflare and others.
Yeah.
So we don't discriminate, if it's in a data center or not.
Yeah. And does it actually have an impact? So let's say you've got like a small village or community of 10 or 12 families that share the infrastructure as like a pooled resource. Let's say you have that situation and then you've got a data center situation with respect to the people that are in proximity to that node, the latency is or the efficiencies that you get, or the efficiencies that you get. Is there any other difference in those setups? Really?
The hyperlocalization is the main selling point.
Yep.
We do have a lot of very unique proprietary technology we've put in. Just haven't been doing engineering for 25 years, and I think this is the third time in my life someone's asked me to build a CDN. So um, we have a lot of great ideas that we've implemented to optimize this, and
Yeah.
we're fully ready to compete just as a Web2 business. And the blockchain gives us the ability to compete at this hyper local scale. And
Yeah.
it's really great. We see industries like Microsoft's pulling back even on building out data centers because they want these hyperscale edge fleets to
Mm,
serve the inference. And we see that as like a next piece for us past video, which
yeah.
is the current revenue driver of CDNs.
Okay, interesting. And then what about for builders? I mean, what is the value prop for engineers and builders? Why Pipe Network? What's the incentive look like for them?
And it's tremendous. So you can launch, for example, an e-commerce site, any type of video application, with all the uniqueness of blockchain or the traditional Web 2. And essentially, your users will get a much better experience than they can with any CDN. So your product's going to become much more sticky because there's a lot less latency. The web pages load a lot quicker. You'll have a lot more less cart abandonment. All the traditional Web 2 issues will be minimized with this solution.
And what has been maybe one of the biggest challenges to adoption that you've seen?
Yeah, I think we have a lot of people testing. We're still very early on in DevNet phase.
Yeah.
My network is mostly of personal, Hulu, these large video streaming companies. And basically, they want to make sure this thing doesn't like catch on fire and burn down in 8 months or so.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where, their company has a high tolerance for, you know, user demand, making sure the company's image is there. So they're very low risk with new technology like this.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of smaller opportunities out there,
Yeah.
especially the AI startups. We've been shocked that they've all basically jumped on board. We're serving inference through them.
Right. And I would assume, like with some of the bigger players, probably the way that this actually rolls out in practice is a lot of pilot projects, right? So, probably signing agreements, seeing how you can deploy this in a small scale, running the metrics, looking at the baselines, understanding the gaps there, and then your team that basically is advocating for the project going to take those learnings to some other executive and kind of going up and up and up through the organization before you realize this massive change for a company like Hulu or someone else.
Yeah, we're lucky because most of those companies are already like multi CDN Pacific.
Mhm.
So they have like a CDN router in the back end that measures latency, automatically will shift user traffic to whatever CDN can provide the video the fastest. So it actually removes a lot of bureaucracy, and it's just more of a mathematic play. And that's where we we shine, as engineers. So
Yeah.
we're really excited to start getting plugged into those workflows.
That's incredible. Yeah, it's on the sales side, it's always easiest when you don't need to go in and make a business case. The numbers speak for themselves, and people love profitability. People love better user experience, and they love operational efficiency. So it sounds like you guys are in a great path. Anything else that you maybe want to leave the audience with? Maybe some big thing that you're looking forward to, milestone, anything that you've got up your sleeve that you want to share?
Yeah, I think essentially just stay stay on the lookout. We'll be launching the test net within the next week or so, and looking to switch the nodes over and scale that up, and just very exciting times.
Okay, very good. Well, David, thank you so much. Sounds like a great project. Very nice to meet you and super excited to see the journey for you.
Cheers.
Thanks, everybody.